Welcome to the Cool Instruments for Hep Cats podcast and the world of creating musical sounds, where every note has a story. In this podcast, we delve into the fascinating realm of unusual and intriguing musical instruments. From the depths of history to the cutting edge of innovation, we'll explore the instruments that have, or will, push the boundaries of what we consider music. Join us on a journey of discovery as we uncover the secrets of the world's most fascinating instruments, the people who play them, and the music they create. Now here is your host, Dr. Donald Rickert.
And also in Bach cantatas, when he writes violoncello piccolo. Violoncello means small violone. Piccolo means small. So it's like saying small violone, very small. It doesn't, this probably shows that he wanted a very, very small one. And we are not speaking about the big cello and small cello that were used for ripieno and solo playing. This is something smaller. And from the writing, we can understand when it had 4 strings or 5. Very often he didn't even use the 5th string. So we are not that sure that it played so well as we are used today. Because today we know we have a bigger, a more fine technology in making strings, so we can go even lower. So this is why I think that in Germany they moved to smaller instrument, and why I think that Bach was so important in developing this instrument. We have some instruments by Hoffman in museums. There is one in Berkeley which is said to be coming from the legacy of Carl Philipp Emanuel Bach, so probably the one that Bach had at home. And there are 2 other ones, one in Brussels and one in Leipzig. Yes. In Brussels they have 3 instruments like that. This is me, my husband, and our friend Thomas Muramatsu when we went to Brussels Museum. And my husband has this one in the middle. The dark one is the original Hoffman. The other is an instrument from Lubeck, who is a maker in Brussels. And these are the 2 instruments that were taken as a starting point from Dmitry Badyarov and Sigiswald Koiken when they wanted to make this instrument again and to use it to play Bach and all the music from Baroque era for violoncello.
The whole discussion of strings is just very interesting to me. I mean, the point at which they discovered, if you want to shorten the length of a string but be able to play the same pitch, you have to make the string thicker. Well, at some point they discovered, well, you don't necessarily have to do that. You can make it heavier. And which the modern algorithm for computing what a string needs to, how a string needs to be made for a particular pitch, for a particular scale length, includes diameter and weight, and that's very interesting to me, and I think it's interesting to a lot of people, especially people who make musical instruments. So thanks for, so that really, they started discovering about that way back, didn't they? If I'm following what you're saying.
In 1640, something like that.
Are you there?
Yeah.
Like today, they can make strings extremely small in diameter.
Yeah, because
by using really heavy materials like tungsten for a winding.
Yeah, but and carbon fiber for the core also.
Yeah.
Well, as I showed you the pic of me and my husband with the with the instrument. In Brussels, you could ask me about my recent trip to Leipzig. So I moved to Leipzig.
Yes. Now, you mentioned your husband, so let's give him some credit. What is your husband's name?
Yes, so my husband is Alessandro Visintini, and he makes instruments with me. He also makes basically violoncello da
Hence the name
Spalla.
of your company.
We make mainly violoncello da Spalla. Well, actually, each of us makes his own instruments. We are not making together, but I'm making my instruments, he's making his instruments, but we make only violoncello da Spalla by now. And we travel together to...
Okay.
We like to make research together. And we are just back actually from a trip in Leipzig, Lubeck and Markneukirchen, which has been very interesting because it moved our perspective on how we saw the instrument and what we thought of it and of its use in the 20th century. So it was great. We started from Leipzig because in Leipzig they have another original Hoffman that we already saw in 2020 when we did our first research trip. This was with our friends Takumi Takakura and Paul Chalet. And this is the original Hoffman.
Okay.
These are the original Hoffman, which is the darker one, compared with the first instrument, the first Violoncello da Spalla made by Alessandro. So you can see that it comes basically in the measures from the original Hoffman, because the idea was playing Baroque music in that period. So they are very similar.
Right.
While here, this is a picture of our latest trip. We are in Leipzig again, together with the curator of the museum, Veit Heller, and we went there to see these two strange instruments that are, this is a cello. It's a very nice one. It has a body of about 50 centimeters, which is about 5 centimeters more than the normal cello da Spalla that we do today. And it's a very nice built body. Unfortunately, we don't have the original neck. But, I mean, the body is so well made and so well preserved that it's an interesting instrument. If we see it like a small cello or a violoncello da Spalla, it doesn't matter. This is a very fine instrument.
Yeah.
And then we went...
Definitely.
Then we saw this other one, which is a very strange one in shape, pretty cool, like a cutaway small cello, like a cutaway guitar. And so this was made, this is cool.
Yeah.
It was made in Italy, in Florence, in 1825, clearly ordered from someone who was playing the violoncello da Spalla, or the viola pomposa, how it was called back then, and wanted a way to be more virtuosic and play higher repertoire. And so he ordered this sort of a cutaway shape that was compensated by the maker with this strange thing on the other part.
That is fascinating.
Yes,
That the cutaway was, people were thinking about a cutaway that far back.
Yeah, exactly. And well, let's waste a couple of moments that I want to show you one more pic. Let me find it. One from above, so we can see the proper shape. Sorry, I didn't put it. One straight from above. Yep.
When you say proper shape, you mean standard shape?
No. Sorry, I meant how it is. Yay. That's...
Oh my goodness.
It's,
wow.
Yes, it's pretty much like a modern electric guitar, is it? And the other cool thing about this instrument is that it has a sloped back, which means the back is cut so that you can put it here on the shoulder. And this sloped back also was very much worn out. So this instrument was used a lot, clearly by someone who wanted to play cello repertoire with the violin technique, but it didn't have a following, so it ended up into a museum. But I think it's very interesting because it meant that there was interest in this kind of playing. And so we went to Leipzig basically to see these two instruments and to speak with the curator, Feiteller, on his idea on why the violoncello da Spalla was, if it was a thing and why. And he told us one interesting thing, that in Leipzig, in Bach's time, they had the biggest trade show in Europe every 3 months. So it was a place where there was a huge exchange of knowledge and products, novelties. And Hoffman was in touch with all this because he was the chief of the local, the town security. So he was probably involved in organizing the event. So he was probably the first person to know about novelties and technology novelties. He was also the son-in-law of a rope maker, not strings but ropes for ships. And his second wife was the daughter of someone making metal wires. And in his times, they were able to make a tube to bring water, that the firemen used to bring water, only with metal wires twisted together in the way that we use today for the cables. I mean, cables for the, like in San Francisco, the cable car.
Yeah.
So that kind of cables with no any... I miss the word when you stick two wires together and then you have a thick thing here. Instead, they were just twisting them so that you didn't have any, saldature. Using Google Translation between streaming. Any wells. They were able to make a pipe to bring around water without any wells, with metal wire without any wells. So I think that making...
So basically you're talking about...
Hoffman, Bach's friend. So I think that making wound strings for him was really not an issue, because he was the son-in-law of a string maker, son-in-law of a rope maker, so he had the machines and he knew everything about metal wires. Anyway, going back to Bach and Hoffman, well, to Leipzig, to our trip in Europe, we then moved to Lubeck, because in Lubeck they have a very special instrument, which is the Johann Wagner.
You've been fascinated with the Wagner instrument for a while, haven't you?
Yes. This is the Wagner instrument. The one in here is the original and the other one is the one that I made, because we went there already in 2020 and we went there again because I wanted to compare them, to take a few more measures. But that to me is a fascinating instrument, because the wear sign in the back are so much and are speaking only of a daspalla use. It doesn't have any wear sign on below the chin, and it was used a lot. It has wear signs everywhere, and it reminds me so much of this instrument that we have in the Bruegel painting of 1612, and even of this one.
Yeah, I recognize
this one is
that.
a French one of 17 something, and it is so similar. And for me, it was well, I was lucky that we went there in 2020, just before the lockdown, because when we went home, and there was the lockdown, I could take the time to make a copy of it that I have here. Let me show it.
Cool Instruments for Hep Cats is brought to you by Don Rickert Musical Instruments, designers and makers of bespoke stringed instruments. All music clips were either recorded in the making of the podcast and played by the guest or guests, who have granted permission to use the clips, or otherwise, used with permission or in accordance with fair use regulations. The music for the intro and outro sequences is performed by the group Attire on jaw harp and djembe and is used with written permission.